I've got a number of speakers that have been really super in terms of coming on board and assisting me relatively last minute, and I would like to thank them for that. Riet Venter from Training Beyond, Rolf Ace from Intercom, I have Mark Sterling from EcoWise, and I have Vota Conradi from NSF. And each one of the presenters are going to be looking at this particular issue in a slightly different way, but hopefully when we put all the information together, it will form a holistic picture, which will make it a package that you'll be able to use in your business. I'm going to hand over now to Riet Venter. As you can see from Riet's experience in the food industry, she has a number of key roles that she has performed, but the area that I'm very much wanting to lean on heavily today is her occupational health and safety expertise. Riet is an environmental health practitioner, but she has specialized in the area of health and safety as well as food safety. And so, Riet, I'd like to ask you to just chat to us a little bit today about how we can, or the people aspects in relation to COVID-19. So over to you. Thanks, Riet. I'm now bringing you online, and you have control of the mouse. Thanks.
Okay, good morning, everybody. It is an honor for me to be given this opportunity to discuss workplace safety with you during a very challenging time that we as South Africans are facing, not only on a personal level, but also in the workplace. If somebody had told you last year that our country, along with the whole world, would soon be facing a major health challenge like the coronavirus, you would have thought it was almost unimaginable. Yet, here we are. I would like to share the following words of Leo Boccaccio with you. Too often, we underestimate the power of a touch, a smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment, or the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn life around. Now, I'm not saying you must break the social distancing rules. I am referring to care for your employees during this difficult time by conducting proper risk assessments in your workplace, implementing the necessary controls, and monitoring compliance. Should a risk get out of control, what mitigating actions will be taken, as well as the business continuity plans in place? At the end of the day, we are all human, and we should care for each other. It is of utmost importance that we all take hands and provide the necessary assistance where needed. As we supply essential products to various companies during this time, it was very disturbing for me to see how courier companies protect their staff. Let me tell you about a recent personal experience. As I was about to hand over a box to the driver, I had my 250ml bottle of hand sanitizer in the back of my pocket. Upon the handover and the driver loading the box into the vehicle, I asked him if I can spray his hands. I was amazed at his reply, which was, "Thank you for caring, as my own company did not even give me something." It is amazing that there are businesses out there that expect the employees to perform and continue with their duties, but they do not come to the party in order to protect them. Is this the right approach? To how many different people is he exposed to on a daily basis with no protection? But the most amazing thing was that he still had a smile on his face. The following areas I'm going to discuss with you, you might think that it should be basics, but believe me, it's not. So let us start to look a little deeper into the type of controls that should be in place. The minimum workplace policies that should be in place and enforced are not limited to the following, but should at least cover social distancing, your personal protective equipment, temperature checks, monitoring smell and taste. You might ask me why, but I had an interesting discussion that with regards to the loss of smell and taste, that's also an indication of some of the symptoms. Testing and continuous monitoring of your employees, isolation and contact tracing, cleaning and sanitation, disinfection of common and high traffic areas, business travel, promote work from home for people who are able to, adhering to the policies and procedures set out in your food safety management system, monitoring absenteeism, emergency communication channels with employees, conducting daily toolbox talks and communicating, infectious disease preparedness, and your response plan. So the following parties can be harmed, which include your staff, visitors, or anyone who physically comes into contact with your business, contractors, cleaners, as well as drivers.
You're managing?
I am managing. It's just I must manage 2 screens here. I do apologize. It was quite quick, and then we go back. So how
Listen,
can I support?
You're the only woman on this presentation. You're supposed to be able to multitask.
Yeah, it's just the 2 screens, but I'm getting there. So how can I support? So how can I support my employees' mental well-being? As COVID-19 changes how we work, employers must also consider the well-being of their employees. You as an employer must put on your oxygen mask before reaching out to others. Once staff know that they are safe and can connect, they can in turn help those who also need assistance. As far as anxiety increased during these uncertain times, it is important, oh my word, okay, my screen is going on 70 places.
Okay, don't worry. I'll control this screen. You control your screen.
Oh, that would be so lovely. Thank you, Linda. I do appreciate that. Okay. So as fear and anxiety increase during these uncertain times, it's important to recognize and be grateful for what we have. Stay connected to those who we love and care for, and lend a helping hand to those who need it. When it comes to your staff, you can ask yourself the following questions.
They're coming.
Okay. So what PPE are you providing? Do you have specifications in place? Is it the correct PPE, and was training conducted on the correct use? If it is reusable shields, do you have specific cleaning procedures in place, replacement frequencies, as they do not last forever? Do they have adequate hand washing facilities and the commodities as running potable water, hand soap, disposable hand paper towels, and hand sanitizer? Did you increase the frequency of hand washing, and who is monitoring this? Did you provide them with a hand sanitizer to carry in their bags that they can use coming to work and going home, as the ultimate aim is to let an employee return home in the same condition as he or she came to work? Did you maybe consider providing them with clean potable water to take home and hand soap or strips to promote hand washing? Making them aware of when entering the premises, they must be monitored and immediately wash their hands, asking them to wear a thin jacket over their clothes when traveling, which will be isolated in storage in case they were exposed during their journey to work. Reducing the amount of staff required to a minimum and practicing social distancing, enforcing scattered tea and lunch breaks, educating them not to consume food with their hands, and providing them with disposable utensils. What controls do you have in place to ensure that their footwear is clean prior to entry? What mental health and well-being awareness programs are you running that will offer support to your staff? Are daily toolbox talks done to promote awareness? And who is conducting planned task observations to ensure the staff is adhering to those controls? The visitors and contractors must be restricted and only allowed for emergency situations. Do you have specific procedures in place? And did you notify the applicable parties of the rules that must be adhered to? If you are open to the public, you must take extra care to protect your customers as well. Let us walk quickly through a shopping experience. It is amazing for me that the trolleys are placed away from the door, and you must first go and collect the trolley, and then they sanitize your hands prior to entry. Is this the right way? No. The wipes should be placed at the trolleys for the first control. Then your hands must be sanitized as the second control. Many places I visited don't even have the correct sanitizer or disinfectant that they spray on your hands, which is creating a false sense of security, because there is an impression out there, as long as I spray their hands with something, it is better than nothing. I think you can agree with me that this is completely the wrong frame of mindset and unacceptable. So what about your cleaners, as they are the most exposed to frequently touched areas? Do they have the correct PPE as well as the correct chemicals? Did you train them not to dry the floor by swinging the cardboard boxes or the safety signs forward and backwards to dry the floor quicker?
Everybody does that.
What is written in your business continuity plan should you not be able to get food grade approved cleaning chemicals when the phased-in approach after lockdown is implemented from 1 May, which is only 6 days away? So how are you protecting your drivers? Do they have hand sanitizer in the vehicle? Are they issued with disposable suits as a buffer of control? Are they working extended hours and suffering from fatigue? Did you limit the amount of people in the cabins if they are not able to maintain proper distancing? Did you provide them with a disinfectant to clean the trolleys that they use during offloading? It is important to care for your drivers, as they are the ones getting your product to the stores and consumers.
Sorry, Riet.
No problem. I'm checking you out of my left eye, my auditing eye. Now, a lot of people might ask, what must be done when one of my employees tests positive for COVID-19? The first step is to isolate and quarantine confirmed employees. And the infected employee should seek medical attention and must first be declared fit to return to work. You must address and isolate the employees working near an infected co-worker. You should ask infected employees to identify all individuals who worked in close proximity for a prolonged period of time. Determine whether they share tools, equipment, or other items with them during a 48-hour period before the onset of symptoms. Send all employees home who work closely with the infected employee for 14 days to ensure the infection does not spread. While quarantined, those employees should self-monitor for symptoms, avoid contact with high-risk individuals, and seek medical attention if symptoms developed. It is important to clean and disinfect your workplace after a positive infected COVID-19 case. Your cleaning staff or a third-party cleaning contractor should clean and disinfect all areas. That's offices, bathroom, common areas, frequently touched areas, but that was used by the infected person or touched by him, focusing especially on those frequently touched areas. Ensure workers are trained on the hazards of the cleaning chemicals used in the workplace and ensure that it is used correctly. Do not dilute chemicals to save costs. Notify your employees who worked in the location or area where the affected person worked. You need to do it without revealing any confidential medical information, such as the name of the employee, unless the employee has signed an authorization to disclose their diagnosis. Inform employees of the actions you have taken, including requiring employees who work closely to the infected person to go home. Let employees know about the cleaning and sanitizing efforts and remind them to seek medical attention if they show symptoms. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you and can't emphasize enough on your focus to keep your employees and workplace as safe as possible by implementing proper risk assessments, introducing the controls in order to mitigate the risks. Keep safe and keep each other safe. Thank you.
Thanks, Riet. And I'm sure that if anybody needs more information with regards to how to conduct this occupational health risk assessment in the food industry, you'll be more than willing to assist them.
Yes, definitely.
From Intercom. I I'm a food safety auditor by profession, and I do a lot of troubleshooting in the industry, a lot of training and so on. And right from the start, I've been involved with COVID-19 plans for food companies. And of course, you learn as you go and you see what works and what doesn't work. So what I'll be doing today, maybe just talk about a bit more about the systems behind it, because Red spoke quite elaborately on the specifics, what to do, but maybe I'll just focus on the system and what must be written down and what must be there from a management point of view. All right. Okay, so let's start with the policy. They should, you can't just do all this stuff and cross your fingers and hope it happens. There must be a formal system behind it. So it starts with a policy, addressing the why. So it's signed by top management, just like you would have a food safety policy or a food defense policy or whatever policy, just something that commits the top manager to actually doing it and putting resources to it. Because it does come with a price tag to get more PPE and more sanitizers and everything. All right, secondly, the how to and what to do written down in procedures with responsibilities, who exactly will do what, where and when. And then very important also risk assessment. You need to look at the risk firstly to the food, to the consumer, and secondly, the risk to the workers, and do a risk assessment for both, and then that will lead you to decision making, because then you'll know priorities, where to focus. And I'll show you an example of a risk assessment of both later on. Might also be a good idea to have a task team, who will actually drive this effort, and they'll have weekly meetings or toolbox talks, like Red said, and just be the voice to the floor, just progress, like CR is doing to the public in South Africa, just telling us what's happening, keeping us up to date. The same should happen in a food factory, so that nobody's left in the dark. Might be a good plan to visualize floor plans like in the picture. And one of the important things I've learned with this whole COVID-19 plan responses for food companies is to isolate shifts. Shifts should not see each other, know about each other, be in contact with others at all. If you don't have shifts, you'll have to start making shifts. Why? Because if one person in a shift or in your factory gets infected, then you need to isolate everybody around them. And if you don't have shifts, then you must isolate everybody, and then you'll take a lot longer to get back to work again. So if it's almost like a contingency, if you have shifts with total segregation between shifts. Right, then, like I said, two aspects. How do we stop the spread between our people so they are safe? And then a lot of questions have been asked around, how safe is food, but the general consensus is it's a respiratory disease. It isn't foodborne. We all know that by now. But there is still a minimum chance that the virus goes on to food like fresh produce or packaging, survives. Lots of different studies on how long it can survive, but theoretically it can go from the food to a consumer's hand. They touch their face and they get infected. So very low risk, but it can happen, and we just need some plans of how we will mitigate this risk. Security reception, we spoke about all these things, maybe just to highlight the signage. And here's a typical sign that you can use. You use signage at the front security, at reception, in the factory itself, just to keep people informed what you can and cannot do. So for a visitor, do you really want to be here? And if you have to be here, this is...
Do you really want to be here? I like that.
Right.
Sorry, Rolf.
Sterilizers, turnstiles, pens, all the extra sanitation, obvious stuff there. Clinics, just have be ready for responses. If there are positives, what's going to be done? What can the clinic do? What's the questionnaires? What's the temperature checking of employees? How are we screening everybody? All those things. A nice one I picked up at the factory is that suppliers shrink wrap their pallets of materials when they bring it in, and that just limits the cross-contamination from our supplier side. Private say in their trucks. We talked about shifts, reduce changeovers. As changeovers comes with intermingling and cross contact and so on. We mustn't overwork our workers, and that's an easy mistake to make, because then you make mistakes and then you don't follow the rules.
Rolf, can I stop you just with the picture, because I think the picture also highlights a very important aspect which I think many companies may be struggling with. If we look at this particular picture, the principle of social distancing would be quite difficult to apply. Obviously, this photograph wasn't specifically taken within a facility that is practicing social distancing, but in a cutting plant, this is quite realistic. How do we manage this situation, given that many of our plants may actually look quite similar?
Yeah. So what I've seen is just limiting the amount of people in the area, and then just distancing them, and actual, demarcation with tape, and you sign the tape and so on, that it's not a foreign material risk. But just less people. You'll have to have less production with that. But that's all you can do. And of course, things like masks, plexiglass screens, like you see in the supermarket, the till operators, all those things also come into play. So a combination of people and good PPE. And
cool. I think you're going to address PPE as well, because we can have it, but it can itself become a problem.
For sure, yeah. Well, a lot of vertical signs, in aisles and things in the food factory, just saying, okay, go here, don't go here. This team goes here, the sanitation team goes there. Just visuals of where to go and not to go. And then most important then, Red, understanding the implication. Workers would, if they start in the first inklings of a sore throat or a cough, they'll be scared and for the repercussions, and they'll tend to keep quiet. So we need to just drill into them. Any symptoms, go to the clinic or phone this hotline or whatever the plan is, that we do something about you, because if you stay quiet, you're going to shut us down and put people's lives at stake. So that should be every day.
I agree with you, and I think it's important that when when we're having these discussions, okay, so we have to have social distancing, we want to limit meetings and what have you, but the importance of actually talking to employees about this with the right tone, supportive, encouraging them to be open and honest. I don't think we can underestimate the importance of that right now.
Yeah, quite right. PPE, we spoke about that, but yes, Linda, the disposal, we had the great mask debate, and it now seems like masks are the norm, but yes, the disposal is a huge problem, and that could cause even bigger risks. So are we going cloth mask, are we disposable? If it's a cloth mask, the laundry, very important, the system behind it, of how you actually track, because it's very easy for somebody to just stick the mask in their pocket and infect everybody. So how are we going to launder, how are we going to dispose with registers and all those things? Same with just all the other PPE, how will that get embedded, what's the plan, what's the procedure behind that?
And I think, sorry, Rolf, but just in terms of the potential cross-contamination between work clothes and PPE, the protocols become even more important now, yes?
Yes, and I'll tell you, from my auditing background, the one thing I always find issues, go to the change room, open a locker, and then you'll see street clothes and work clothes together, and it's now that mistake is no longer acceptable anymore. We talked about welfare areas, we talked about extra sanitation. One thing to point out is cell phones, this is maybe why this virus is spreading so quickly compared to other viruses in 1918 and so on, is because of cell phones. Everybody has one, everybody touches it, nobody sanitizes their phone, so that's a good spread. So, we need to limit that in the food factory like we have to under normal circumstances anyway. And then if you've got a position where you need a cell phone for whatever reason, then it should be limited to a designated area and it should be sanitized at a frequency based on risk. Computer keyboard, grading, handles, tools, utensils, all those things, the QC thermometer. Think about all the places that need to be sanitized.
Can I just go back to the Plexi Shield? I have to say, I do think personally that's a better option, than the face mask. Although it's not really intended to protect, or it's not going to catch any respiratory issues. But I think it's just potentially easier to work with, provided I'm still using the correct coughing practices, and obviously provided I'm not a positive employee. But I think that's obviously something that should also be sanitized, because I'm going to obviously be handling it.
For sure, yeah, that can get very dirty very quickly. So yes, there should be a plan to sanitize that.
Yes.
This was just a nice idea I got from Ghana, where they did hand wash facilities. So they built them from 200-liter drums. So anything's possible if you put your mind around it. Then the response plan. What do we do if a worker gets COVID-19? We touched on that. What about a service provider? What about somebody from the sanitation team? We need to have contingency plans. Know what to do, and we need to practice this. A crisis management scenario planning situation. We actually practice what you're going to need. You test your numbers. You do an action log. You see if you can handle this situation quickly and efficiently, because like with food recalls, same principles, the seconds count. All right, now let's look at that risk assessment I promised. So firstly, the worker safety risk assessment, just a simple table where you talk about each aspect, the reception, the production, what can happen, what's the risk, high, medium, low, what you'll do to mitigate the risk. Maybe to just reference this to a procedure also. Then what about the risk via food, fresh produce or packaging? As said, it's low risk but not negligible. We need to address this risk, we need to document this. But the thing is, if you protect your workers, it doubles as the consumer protection as well, because then if they don't contaminate each other, they won't contaminate, and that will double. Include it in your asset assessment, in your risk assessment for food safety, and then communicate to your suppliers just what is being done about the mitigation of risks. Another good place to put it is if FSSC 22000 version 5, there's the organizational risk section, organizational risks and opportunities. In there, one can put your COVID-19 as a risk for the company and then a plan of how this will be managed. All right, so there it is in asset. So this is a chocolate packing company, and there's the coronavirus transmission, and then it's generally a low risk. So just to update asset, put it in there, what's being done about it, won't be a critical point or anything, could be part of your prerequisites, but one needs to document this. Then, as said, if you go to FSSC version 5, I stick it in here under a risk to the organization and what will be done about that. don't lose to end off, don't lose focus on food safety now, because remember, the green means what advantages the COVID-19 plan will bring, and the red is the disadvantages. So the advantages are we'll be cleaning better for coronavirus, so that means our pathogens will also be less, so that's a good thing. Better PPE, so less cross-contamination by pathogens as well. Better security, people won't just be able to sneak into the premises or sneak into different apartments without being seen. A lot more difficult, so that's a bonus. But the downside, less staff means less time to do paperwork, less time to follow the systems, less time to manage the pests, less time to do maintenance. Now, especially maintenance going to be a problem, is a problem, because certainly maintenance people, so all the extra rules not getting to their work, and then it leads inevitably to things like farm material contamination, machine breakdowns, all those things. So one must try and plan for that. And then, of course, raw material supply. Your supplier might close down because they've got infections, and you need a very clear contingency plan, backup suppliers. And the danger there is we can use unapproved suppliers, and then that brings new food safety risks. So to make things practical, what I can bring to the party is we've got a COVID-19 awareness booklet that's freely available on our website. We've got a free implementation plan, with a risk assessment, with a procedure that's available on our website. There on top, COVID-19 support pack. Then my previous employer, ARB International in America, has got a good COVID-19 self-assessment. Just a 3-page self-assessment, just to cover that you've looked at everything. And there's also some good guidance what the UK is doing, and for guidance for their food businesses, and then also Ireland. Their food industry, what they're doing there. And obviously, they've got much more cases and much more examples and so on to learn from. All right, so hopefully in 6 months' time or whatever, we'll all be able to buy this hoodie. And
yeah, Alison, please take note. Is this replacing your blue, red, or purple jacket?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, people, I apologize for the sound because I know it wasn't perfect, but I didn't want to stop because I don't want us to lose lose this valuable information. So thank you very much, Rolf, for that presentation. I'm now going to hand over to Mark Sterling, and Mark is going to be.
Thanks, Linda. I appreciate the opportunity. Morning, everybody. I do apologize in advance. Linda had to apologize for the last session. This time it's not her, I'm afraid it's my voice, but social distancing is in place, and that is all we do have to worry about right now. As per my intro, I have been with EcoWise for many years. As some of you know, we are one of the leading food safety partners in the country. We do offer a full service with regard to our cleaning, professional services, personal hygiene, and cleaning. Excuse me, sorry, as I struggle through with my voice. We have put together some protocols, and we have based them as much as possible on the recognized standards that have been available. As per the documentation available, the most common chemicals that are being used in the cleaning industry, nationally, is the 70% isopropyl alcohol, which has been used for the disinfection of the smaller equipment, such as thermometers, biometrics, computers, etc., as had been mentioned earlier. and sodium hypochlorite, and it's been recommended at 0.5% for disinfecting of hard surfaces, walls and floors. A bit more about that just now. Obviously, we have put some plans in place. Correct PPE, as was mentioned earlier, is obviously essential. Disposable coveralls, if you are in office type environments, and of course oilskins if you're in wet cleaning environments. Boots or safety shoes. If you're going to be fogging, of course, there's the respirator masks, otherwise dust masks, safety goggles, safety gloves, and of course there are the shields as well that could be used for face protection. It's obviously essential that the cleaning team are trained in the protocols that need to be carried out, and obviously staff have to be screened as well on a daily basis. Observing of hand washing, sanitizing, coughing and sneezing, etiquette and social distancing is obviously important in the cleaning team as well as much as for all other teams.
Mark, if I can just ask you a question there. I know you've had to provide, I mean, you're a cleaning service provider, so I'm sure you've had to consider the impact of your team going into someone else's food facility.
Yes, Linda, we have. We have obviously have to have the screening in place constantly so that we ourselves can be sure that we're not introducing it. And obviously we need to do everything possible to ensure that our own staff are safe as well. And hence the PPE, we need to know from contact tracing of the customers, if their staff were positive, exactly where they'd been, where the focus areas are, so that we can also make sure that our staff are safe.
And of course, if someone is positive from your team, you would then need to interact with your customer in that respect.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I think it's an important point, because many companies may be considering their own staff, but they're not necessarily considering the impact of subcontractors in the same way.
That is most definitely a point of concern. This is something that's affecting absolutely everybody, and it is not something that can be kept swept under the carpet. We need to make sure full disclosure and transparency, not only from EcoWise, but from the customers, the suppliers, everybody. All right,
Great.
so just to continue. Before we can start cleaning, approval has to be given by the MICD or Department of Health that we can then continue. So we would need to get that in writing and the go ahead, and then we can go. Obviously, companies need to have a plan or a protocol in place. You wait till the last minute to get that sorted, so please, the plans must be available. Kind of information obviously that needs to be taken into account is who's going to be doing the cleaning, chemical matrix, what can be used, what can't be used, what kind of process you're going to use for the cleaning and disinfection, dry cleaning, wet cleaning, are you going to use fogging? Be prepared for reference documents. What do you need to verify that the clean has taken place? And then, of course, space for cleaning and sanitation staff to sign, so that we have an acknowledgement from each individual who has taken part, so that the tracing is available afterwards as well, so that we know who was involved in that clean, so that there are no gaps. Contact tracing, as I mentioned just now, in the workplace, very important, not only for the customer, but for ourselves. We need to know who the fellow employees are that would possibly be at risk, as well as the employee's footprint. Where have they been in the plant? What was their workflow? Where did they go from turnstiles through to processing, so that we can concentrate on the focus areas of that individual, as well, of course, as covering the entire facility.
Mark, I'm going to interrupt you there. I just want to ask you two questions. So I mean, you mentioned the clean after positive protocol. Have you, as EcoWise, been involved with assisting companies with this particular post-infection clean, for want of a better word?
We have been involved in some possible positives, not yet direct positives. But
okay.
in place, and we've been doing a lot of preventive cleaning.
Okay, all right. Because I think what it's, you just mentioned, you introduced the concept of the Departments of Health being involved, the EHP being involved. But I think what you've said in terms of emergency planning, the way that you would need to go about doing this is as per the previous slide. In terms of these are the things that you would need to think about if you're going to prove, if you like, or substantiate that you can now start up because the process that you've used has in fact been sufficient. In the last couple of weeks, we've seen many food companies that have had to close temporarily, and I think that's really what people are asking is, what do I have to do while I'm closed in order to ensure that I can prove that I can open again? And I think this has given us a very good, background from that perspective and your experience in that regard. So thanks very much for that. You can continue.
Thank you. All right, so we've spoken about the contact tracing. So obviously, when it comes to the actual cleaning itself, last year, obviously, we had the Listeria outbreak, and that certainly changed the game from a food processing point of view, food contact areas. And this, I think, in particular, the COVID-19 is now bringing the focus not only on the food contact and product handling, but to the non-product handling areas, the high touch points, offices and maintenance. Both Rolf and Riet earlier spoke about computers, and so you've got to be looking at all the high touch points, desks, chairs, phones, computer screens, door handles, light switches, hand railings, any surface that is being touched more than or very frequently. We need to make sure that we cover thoroughly. You've got your kitchen, and in the kitchen you're looking at almost all work surfaces. Obviously you've got your light switches, microwaves, door handles, the taps, fridge doors. You've got to be careful not to leave out anything in that area in particular. And sometimes obviously that's a personal issue that we should all be taking care of. The preferred chemical in this type of cleaning would, of course, be the alcohol sanitizer. When it comes to factory non-production areas like ablutions and locker rooms, obviously the areas of concern are your door handles, your toilets, the toilet handle and the seat, taps, soap dispensers, the lockers. In canteens, you're looking not only at the door handles and switches, but the benches, the chairs and the tables, wash basins, water fountains. The list is endless. You obviously have to go into each department, each canteen, and see what is there and make the list for your verification. In your maintenance, areas of concern always would be your work surfaces, your tools and your toolboxes that are being carried into the processing areas as well. From this point of view, you'd be worried about biometric systems, turnstiles, the security office, of course, if you're signing in, as was mentioned earlier, wiping pens and things like that. In this area, your sodium hypochlorite would be your common cleaning chemical for your larger surfaces, and 70% alcohol-based sanitizer, obviously neat for the smaller biometrics and things like that. The areas that mustn't be forgotten: smoking areas, clinics, laundries, laboratories, security offices, and don't forget the buses and taxis that are bringing the staff to and from work. Often those are contracted buses or or taxis. So we need to make sure that those also are our responsibility. We need to get those cleaned. And of course, walls and floors. Preferred chemical in these areas would be sodium hypochlorite. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, these alcohol-based sanitizer, the application would be predominantly neat by spray bottle. Allow 10 to 15 minutes if you can for contact time. Wipe the surfaces with a clean cloth. And obviously from a food processing area, we would be wanting those to be sort of food plant approved, not your rags. Pre-diluted solution of sodium hypochlorite. We said earlier 0.5%. Obviously, in a working floors, etc., I would go at 1%, but you can follow the range given on the label. Preferably warm water can be applied to non-factory, non-product handling surfaces and floors for cleaning. Obviously, you need to take color coding principles into account. We need to remember that reconciliation of cleaning equipment and PPE, disposable PPE and consumables, that needs to be treated as healthcare risk waste. Sanitizing cleaning equipment before storage is essential. And then obviously completion of the necessary handover documents. From a wet sanitation protocol, obviously it needs to be industry and plant specific plans need to be in place. Generally speaking, the master cleaning schedule is available, the SSOPs, the cleaning procedures are well entrenched in the large majority of the factories. So generally speaking, in the food processing area, there would not be too much that would change. At the end of the shift, you need to go in, you have your chlorinated caustic detergent or your heavy duty alkaline detergents that can be used, that can be supplemented in high touch areas with a 1% sodium hypochlorite solution. Obviously, be careful of mixing chemicals and follow manufacturer's instructions. Peracetic acid, it has been shown that 0.5% hydrogen peroxide has been effective. And we have also mentioned QAC broad spectrum sanitizers. Although no sanitizers have been tested for COVID, a lot of sanitizers have been tested against enveloped viruses, and we need to do everything possible in the plant to address this. Seems it's gone to sleep. Okay, so from a chemical point of view, we need to make sure, please, that the material safety data sheets, labels, technical data sheets are all available. The certificate of conformance, obviously, nothing has changed for COVID-19 from a registration or a certification point of view from a chemical part, except, of course, we do want to know the virucidal efficacies there, but as I mentioned, no chemicals have been tested directly against SARS-CoV-2. So available at the moment, there are some chemicals still conscribing to 1828 or 1853, but the majority have got independent verification from accredited laboratories, and that generally comprises of the toxicological assessment for use in direct food contact applications, as well as the bactericidal efficacy reports. The common being EN1276. The sanitizers, of course, should also be registered with the NRCS. Virucidal efficacy reports, as I mentioned, not currently available, but envelope viruses have been tested, for example, the avian influenza virus. seem to have gone to sleep, so just hold on a second.
Mark, while you're just clearing your throat, just a couple of issues with regards to this slide. There's been a lot of backwarding and forwarding in the last couple of days, particularly around some statements that were made by the National Institute of Occupational Health in their workplace preparation training, where they suggested to companies that they require virucidal efficacy reports. There is a laboratory that can provide the facility, but the samples are sent overseas, and the turnaround time is at least 8 weeks. And so, you know, it doesn't appear that we can actually test this within South Africa. The NIOH confirmed that even the National Health Laboratory has been waiting for their permit to be issued to actually handle the SARS-CoV virus. So we do seem to have a bit of a problem in this area, and I think it is going to be increasingly important for cleaning companies like yourselves to be referring to published data, as you've suggested, and also just to verify the concentrations, because I think, you know, it's kind of all that we currently have to fall back on. But watch this space. It is an area that I'm working on very hard, because I think it's an area where there's a lot of potential for abuse, unfortunately. Back over to you.
Yeah, Linda, thanks for that. You're quite right. We have been searching for South African laboratories that can do virucidal efficacy tests, and we've hit an absolute brick wall, so we're also looking overseas. Even contact with the NRCS here in South Africa, who currently are responsible to register sanitizers, cannot give us a referral to a laboratory for that. So very frustrating, but as you say, we have to make do with the tests that we have been able to manage and previous research and publications.
I think what is important is that just because the cleaning chemicals have previously been tested for bactericidal efficacy does not necessarily infer that they will be effective against the virus. And I think this is just an important point that we do need to highlight, and we do need to refer to peer-reviewed literature, you know, when it comes to the active ingredients in the disinfectants that you're using. I think it's a very, very important point that we need to take note of, and I'm glad you stressed it. Thank you, Mark.
Absolutely. And Linda, you're going to have to, thank you. Right, so just a slide there. EcoWise does have its range of chemicals, and the chemicals listed here do have the necessary verifications from a bactericidal point of view, and have been tested on various other viruses, but again, within the constraints within the country. From a wet cleaning or wet sanitation protocol point of view, obviously, we've been involved in this for many years. We do have what we call our 10 steps of cleaning methodology, which is basically the getting ready. I've listed some points within that, obviously not everything, but you've got your COVID screening, your pre-shift meetings, your hygiene checklists, your PPE inspection, your issue of equipment and chemicals. All of this needs to be documented and verified. Second step is your pickup, and that would also, during this step, you would wipe off any sensitive equipment with alcohol-based sanitizer and make sure that that equipment can be covered so that to prevent damage during the next step, which is your rough rinse, preferably with 45 to 50 degree water. That would certainly be beneficial from a virus point of view. The next step is your foaming, and here you would use your it's your detergent step. So you've got either your chlorinated alkaline detergent or your heavy duty detergent. You could also add on your high touch point areas a 1% solution of sodium hypochlorite. Your foaming step is followed by your scrubbing step, which of course is the necessary agitation that is required to break down dirt. Final rinse step is basically to remove all solid and chemical debris. And also what needs to be focused on is prevention of cross-contamination to equipment that has already been cleaned and rinsed. Your inspection step, obviously essential from a food safety point of view, followed by your sanitizer step. Here we would be recommending an AF peracetic acid sanitizer. Previous publications have shown that the hydrogen peroxide content of that is beneficial. So hence we go with the peracetic acid. Recommended that there is a 15-minute contact time. And of course, what is important in this step and in the previous detergent step is that you carry out the chemical concentration verification, and that concentration is recorded for future audit's sake, and you verify that everything is in place. After your sanitizing, you've got your handover steps, again completing the verification. Finishing off basically entails your sanitizing of your cleaning equipment and the disposal of any consumable cleaning equipment and PPE, which would be treated as healthcare waste in these instances. The COVID protocol handover to the customer would also, in these instances, include the NICD and the Department of Health. Bit of finger trouble, it seems.
You're back? Not a problem. I'll move it on.
Thank you. All right. As mentioned earlier, quite a few companies have requested fogging of their institutions and departments. This would normally follow a dry or a wet cleaning protocol. There are different types. There is a ULF cold fogging where alcohol sanitizer can be used with an hour's settling time. And of course, then there is hot fogging where a QAC or a peracetic acid sanitizer can be used. This would require 8-hour settling time when the area must be obviously evacuated and left sealed, and then opened 8 hours later and ventilated. Absolutely essential if fogging is involved is to make sure that sensitive equipment is covered or removed. The use of respirators and cartridges, the buddy system must always be in place for safety reasons, and of course signage to prevent anybody entering areas where fogging has taken place. Thanks. And as I'm sure everybody's heard previously, the job's not finished till the paperwork's done. And this slide just shows the incredible amount of paperwork that is needed to be put in place to cover the COVID-19 situation. And obviously, EcoWise is available at any time to assist with any cleaning or decontamination needs or system needs that you might have. Thanks very much.
Well, thanks, Mark. People, I think you got lots of very, very useful information there. And even if it was just to say, we're doing the right thing, sometimes that's, some of the most important information you can collect. Mark, some very important points. The fact that you highlight healthcare waste. I'm sure there are a lot of us that haven't, thought about that. In the sense of changing cleaning processes, or rather waste processes to consider that. I think that was a very important point. There has been one question, and I think this is something that we've had to deal with before. We are referring continuously to the use of alcohol, isopropyl alcohol, that word. The question I want to ask you is, how does this impact on halal status? I know we've had to make alternative arrangements and facilities that have halal status, but what would we do then? There are alternatives that we can use?
Thanks, Linda. Yeah, that is a good question. And there are alcohols, isopropanol, for example. Our product, isopropanol, is covered by the halal certification because it is there's no animal-based ingredient in. Ethanol is another story, so we do need to be sure what active ingredients are being used in the manufacture of the product. And I think at a time like this, when the demand for the product has absolutely skyrocketed, this does become a concern, and it is something that will need to be investigated further.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's going to be absolutely critical. Mark, thank you very much. I'm now going to bring the next presenter online, and that being Wouter Conradi. Wouter, I know you've had a few challenges in finally being with us, but I'm very, very pleased to see you online. Wouter, you're going to take us through a presentation on some lessons learned, because obviously there are some countries where NSF is operating that are slightly ahead of us on this curve, and what lessons can we learn from them? So over to you, Wouter. Thanks very much.
Hi, Linda. Just checking. Can you hear me?
We can indeed hear you.
Okay. So good day, everyone, and thank you for joining our session. I am Wouter Conradi, Managing Director of NSF International's operation in Africa. Our head office is in Stellenbosch, but we are working from various locations in South Africa, and also in Kenya and Ghana, from where we serve our clients in 15 African countries. I'm a food scientist with a background in agriculture, food processing, retail, and exporting, and for the past 14 years, I've been managing the NSF operations in Africa. I want to take you on a quick journey of what we have experienced in some countries in Europe, and particularly in China. First of all, talk a bit about the virus itself, and then some of the observations in retail sector in the Benelux, the challenges we face in the food manufacturing sector in UK, and finally, I want to tell you what our colleagues in China are doing at this stage. Our mission has always been to protect and improve public health and safety, and we do this by developing standards, testing, certification, and auditing. And independent from certification, we offer consulting and training services to the food-related sector. So first, a bit more about the virus coming from our lab in Germany. The family of coronaviruses, and Mark has referred to this already in his talk, and as well as Rolf, but it has been first described in the 1930s, and the first human version was described in 1965. It is an enveloped virus, as Mark said, which is important, and I will speak a bit more about that later. In humans, it is usually responsible for a range of very mild upper respiratory tract infections, such as the common cold, of which about 15% are caused by coronaviruses. There are many more strains and reservoirs, mainly animal reservoirs, and mainly in mammals. The one that researchers are focusing on at the moment is the bat reservoir, specifically the horseshoe bats of Southeast Asia, and they have been showed to switch hosts. So these coronaviruses could cause zoonotic diseases in humans, such as the severe acute respiratory syndrome, which was called SARS in 2002, and the Middle Eastern respiratory syndrome MERS epidemic in 2008. So of course, now we have a new or called novel coronavirus called SARS coronavirus 2 to reflect the close similarity to the SARS epidemic. And now, as you all know, we have a worldwide epidemic that has already infected more than 2.7 million people, and more than 190,000 people have died from the virus. It is highly infectious, even 2.5 days before people are showing symptoms. It can be asymptomatic, but also could cause severe respiratory stress and is currently threatening to overwhelm several healthcare systems around the world. As I mentioned before, it is, and as Mark mentioned, is an enveloped virus, so it can be inactivated quite easily because it has a fatty outer layer which can be dissolved by soaps, ethanol, or laundry detergents, or temperatures above 60 degrees. The good thing is there's currently no transmission via food. So as long as proper food hygiene is observed, like washing hands, washing your equipment, using the proper protective equipment, and cooking and cleaning food properly. The World Health Organization has issued great health guidelines regarding workplace behavior that should be observed, as the main transmission pathway seems to be droplets and direct contact with infected persons or contaminated surface. The most important, of course, is the hand washing and regular cleaning, and the disinfection when needed of surfaces with products such as discussed by Mark from EcoWise. Next, we'll look at the retail sector in the Benelux, and I will discuss some of the future actions and possible scenarios. At the end, the lessons learned during this crisis will probably accelerate some ongoing trends in the retail sector. So not only new trends, but ongoing trends. Retailers will need to re-evaluate their risk exposure, not only in the product specification side, looking at ingredients having possible contamination, but also in terms of labor protection in the shops and the type of online tools to manage booming and increased e-commerce activity. The retailers will have to move to smarter supply management. Smarter means not better, but smarter means more flexible. Today, retailers are sitting on a pile of information regarding their product specification, using various in-house developed tools, such as Trace1 and others, with large amounts of information that is not evaluated in the right way today. So the systems will probably need to move to smarter, more dynamic ways of management of the data to mitigate and analyze any potential risk for future crises like this. The most important, and this is probably new, is that retailers may start to ask their suppliers to demonstrate virus-free supply chain integrity. Demonstrate means proving that their supply chain is virus-free. We are already used to this in the Scandinavian countries. We have norovirus outbreaks every year in frozen foods. We believe that there will be a shift in certain products from the traditional motto of buy global, sell local. That will change probably to buy local, sell local, as a way to mitigate risk and reduce cross-contamination across borders. And this is this comment is more specifically to Europe, where they really gonna focus more on crossing border movement. We may see more focus on simple products, cleaner labels, banning of certain origins, and other trends that may be reinforced going into the future.
Bota, I think, sorry,
Yes.
Bota, can I interrupt you there? I got something yesterday in my inbox about supporting local within South Africa. And so I think it may not only be Europe. I think we may see it, you know, a stronger trend here as well.
Yeah, I agree. I just think one must. I'm thinking more of a very huge export industry in fresh produce that
Sure.
the European companies cannot really produce the food we send them because
No.
of climate. So hopefully they will continue to import.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm going to share some of the insights that we've gained in the food manufacturing sector in the UK and in Europe, as well as some possible solutions there. The main issue that we are all facing in the food manufacturing area in terms of quality management of this sector is that the traditional tried and tested methods, which involved a lot of on-site visiting and auditing and inspection and presence during production, may no longer be available to us. So at a time when this sector is at its greatest pressure for increased volumes, potential labor shortages, and other impacts, the risks are even more increased than usual. It's arguable that the methodologies and techniques we have to help mitigate the risks are no longer available to us in future. So we got to find other ways of making sure our supply chain is integral. So there are all sorts of things people are doing to help manage and mitigate the risk. And one of them is to think about the approach they've normally used to approve and manage their factory quality programs, but they have to overlay this with COVID-specific risks that we've just talked about. Also important, using more listening, questioning, and root cause analysis techniques to try to get to the bottom of what really is the causative factor. It's really important, as opposed to traditional, arguably tick box style approaches of visits. Taking advantage of any remote operational activities that you can use to access the factories. Using other tools that may be available, such as databases of certified factories or certified suppliers of raw materials. Definitely also revisiting your food fraud risk assessments and overlaying these with risk in light of the new challenges. Thinking of new temporary labor, making sure they are responsibly sourced. And of course, while it is easy to get buried in the day-to-day of this, you got to start planning for the future. So finally, I would like to share with you some of the very interesting facts from our colleagues at NSF in China. As you know, in China, we have started to return back to normal, so people can go anywhere. It is pretty safe. However, people still have to wear masks and keep social distance, and most stores and restaurants are now open. I'm going to talk about some of the practices of reopening businesses in China, which we can learn from. The first thing is to set up a team to deal with COVID-19 and establish a quarantine system. In China, the government established a quarantine system. Each person in China, and this is fascinating, has to register on this system with a mobile app where they manage a database to track your movements for the last few weeks. Also, if you have been at a place which is defined as a high-risk place, then it will show as a barcode on your mobile as either green, orange, or red. The green color means you can go anywhere. The orange color means you have some restrictions. And if you have turned red, it means you have to be in quarantine in your home for 14 days. And that is still and still will be in place in China. And as I said, every person is monitored. They've got cameras in the streets everywhere with facial recognition. They know where you are, they know where you're going. And if you're going to go shopping or visiting high-risk places, you're going to turn from green to orange. So in each store, you have to have a dedicated person to check body temperatures and ensure that disinfection processes are in place. And you have to check the barcode we just discussed over the phone. In most stores, they use online booking systems to limit people entering the stores. When opening a new restaurant store, normally in the first few weeks, you want to reduce the opening hours to reduce the risk. You would typically start with working only half days until you have established and entrenched proper disciplines in your staff and your customers before extending to normal opening hours. It is also important to improve the indoor air exchange rate to improve ventilation in the store. In China, before opening, you have to apply for a permit by supplying documentation to government, and then you will receive first an audit of the store. If you pass the audit, you can open, and if not, you have to first make some changes. As part of this reopening audit, you have to demonstrate that you have sufficient stock of protective clothing, protective wear, and cleaning equipment in place, in stock. As I said before, in terms of customer services, you have to at least have one staff member standing outside of the entrance. And I think we've seen in many stores very good practices here in South Africa, but quite often these people are standing inside the store, and it actually causes a bit of a build-up of people at that point, which is not a great idea. So the person will check body temperature and the colored barcoded card, but also important is that this person will provide guidance to the customer on the disciplines expected when they are inside the store. And this is also emphasized by posters and brochures, which they hand out outside of the store. They also obviously put it in the media when they advertise their business, that what is the procedures in their stores. So they tell the customer that they are safe and how to shop with them. This is also displayed with TV screens inside the stores. So each customer has to wear a mask. They have to wash their hands before entering the store. And it's important to provide the customer assurance that the store has carried out comprehensive disinfection in order to avoid concerns. The apps and touchscreen ordering systems help to reduce the contact with surfaces and products. So yeah, that is I think what my overall conclusion is that, you know, I think we're doing a lot of good stuff already in South Africa. I think we're very well informed. Our government are making really good calls, and so there are very good disciplines already entrenched, and I think we are well informed. So there's not a lot of surprises in what I've learned from my colleagues in NSF. Thank you.
Thank you, Wouter. I think it's just whether or not we're going to now have a new national dress code. And that is, will we have to continue wearing our masks, and for how long? You know, I think that's interesting. If you take where Wuhan and China are now in relation to where we are, everyone is still wearing face masks. So it's going to be interesting to see whether we are now going to have some of those. I noted with interest and with sympathy that the president was also not entirely comfortable with this new piece of clothing last night when he addressed us as the nation. But I think it very clearly and very humanely demonstrated how difficult this is for all of us, and that this is definitely not normal. These are not normal times, and we need abnormal measures to be in place. So thank you very much, Wouter, for your contribution. Thank you, Riet, Mark, Rolf, Wouter. Thank you for the very useful information that you provided with us with today. We really appreciate it. For those of you that have stayed with us for the duration of this very, very comprehensive webinar, I think, thank you so much for that. Thank you for bearing with us, with everyone and their grovelly voices today. We've all got these sort of husky voices today, and I can understand Mark's case, but I'm not entirely sure why we weren't able to resolve the problem with Rolf. So Thank you for your patience. I know the sound quality wasn't the best, but thank you to each one of you for the very generous sharing of information, which I think we can all use within our facilities. And so for those of you that may still have questions that you would like to pose, won't you pop them to me on an email, Linda@FoodFocus, and we'll be sure to try and get some answers for you. So for all that's left for me to say is thank you for being with us, and enjoy the long weekend, and do stay safe. Thanks for being with us on this Friday.